The strongest souls are the ones feeling the heaviest shake right now, and that is exactly where this message begins. If you have been waking with a knot that won't unwind, if routines that used to comfort you now feel like thin wallpaper over a cracked foundation, if anger rises in you like a compass needle pointing to what must change, then this is for you. The struggles of powerful souls. Understanding Mars in Aquarius. That phrase is not a headline, it's a map. Read it as an invitation to look, to name, and to steer. You may already sense the pattern. Pressure arrives first, loneliness follows, and then impatience sharpens everything. It feels disproportionate because something inside you is moving ahead of what surrounds you. For many of you, leaders, pioneers, people wired for mission, this transit lands like an electrical surge to a building not yet rewired. That surge is Mars in Aquarius, activation meeting prototype energy. Mars brings activation, drive, and friction. Aquarius brings the architecture of the future, systems, truth, and the kind of originality that doesn't ask permission. Together, they wake the parts of you designed to push new shapes into the world. Before we go deeper, are you noticing more restlessness or impatience than usual? Drop a one-line comment about what you're experiencing, just a short word or phrase. It helps others know they aren't alone. Mars, in plain terms, is the engine. It's the part of experience that pushes, confronts, and accelerates. It creates movement, sometimes by increasing discomfort until movement becomes inevitable. Aquarius is the blueprint maker. It peers at collectives and asks, what could be more honest, more effective, more true to the next stage? Aquarius values prototypes, people who test new forms and new functions. When Mars rides through Aquarius, it isn't a random test. It tends to target that experimental edge of humanity, the people who think differently, who can carry change, who are too restless to remain neatly folded into yesterday's designs. That is why powerful souls feel this particularly. You were built to notice where structure is rotten or outdated. You don't merely feel, you prognose. You sense the mismatch between an emerging possibility and the world's current capacity to hold it. Where others seek comfort, you measure integrity. Where others avoid conflict to keep things smooth, you are drawn toward the moment that forces clarity. Mars in Aquarius highlights those tendencies. It adds pressure. It makes the mismatch louder. It does not punish. It clarifies. Think of it like architectural work on a living city. Mars is the crew with jackhammers. Aquarius is the urban planner holding a future map. The crew's noise wakes everyone, but the planner knows which walls must come down to build something that will last. For those who are prototypes, it feels as if the jackhammers are aimed at your own skeleton. That sensation, shaking, destabilization, sometimes isolation, is not a sign that you are failing. It is a sign that you are being prepared for a different structural role. Here's what that preparation often looks and feels like. You may wake up with a sense of misplacement. Your job, partnership, routine, or social circle no longer fits the design unfolding within you. This is structural displacement, not simple sadness. Sadness is a soft, diffuse ache. Structural displacement is the sense that the scaffolding around you is temporary, that you are moving from a limbic experience into a practical reconfiguration of life. You might feel alone, not because people abandoned you, but because the people available right now are tuned to a different frequency. That loneliness is a clearing, it isn't an indictment. Pressure functions like pruning. In botanical terms, a gardener cuts back branches not to harm the tree, but to encourage stronger, more focused growth. Mars in Aquarius prunes options that would become weak foundations later. Doors closing, relationships cooling, projects stalling. These are not universal punishments. They are the ecosystem's way of saying, we will not support weak scaffolding for a structure that must hold weight. This pruning is painful precisely because it is necessary. We do not grow new architecture by propping up the rotten wood. We grow it by clearing space for honest building. A critical emotional contour of this transit is what I call righteous anger. This anger is not the chaotic, indiscriminate rage that demolishes everything in sight. It is a focused, principle-oriented heat that rises when you encounter compromise masquerading as progress, or charm used to avoid accountability, or systems that prioritize convenience over truth. Righteous anger feels sharp because it is a boundary inspector. It points toward reinvention more than revenge. When you experience it, notice where it pushes you. Is it towards setting a firm boundary, changing a process that suppresses creativity, or walking away from a role that asks you to pretend to be smaller? Righteous anger is a signal, not to lash out indiscriminately, but to reallocate your energy into forms that can hold your future influence. When Mars fuels Aquarius, the redirection quality is key. Rather than burning what exists for the sake of dramatic collapse, the impulse is to refashion. Imagine an old factory turned into a laboratory for innovation. The factory's boilers are useless, the walls and the land are the value. The anger helps you rip out the obsolete machinery and repurpose the bones. You'll find yourself less interested in winning approval and more interested in the truth of utility. You will say no to projects that glitter but do not serve the design, and yes to experiments that demand responsibility over glamour. This period also awakens a specific kind of intelligence, unconventional, pattern-seeking, and socially informed. Aquarius brings cognitive equipment geared towards systems thinking and collective architecture. Mars supplies the impetus to act on the patterns you perceive. That combination is fertile for people who can hold complexity, those who perceive how ideas travel across networks, who sense where blockages are and how new pathways can be engineered. It's not merely about cleverness. It's about a kind of practical originality that turns insight into structures others can use. You may notice your tolerance for surface-level fixes plummeting. Small compromises that once seemed harmless now register as corrosive. Superficial praise feels empty. Social niceties that gloss over injustice or inefficiency offend you more sharply. This is a sign that approval is no longer your currency. Authenticity is. That change often looks like impatience to outside observers. It can feel isolating because being authentic requires stripping away facades that previously lubricated social life. But authenticity also attracts alignment. It's a filter. Fewer options may remain in your life, yes, but those that remain are sturdier and more suited to what you will be asked to carry. Delays are another theme to reframe. It's tempting to interpret waiting as punishment, especially when the impatience in you is intense. But many delays during this transit act as alignment processes. Think of a contractor who refuses to lay a roof until the foundation is verified. It is frustrating in the moment. Rain will leak and the house looks unfinished. But it prevents catastrophe later. Mars in Aquarius tends to slow some timelines while accelerating internal reconstruction. You are being given time to shore up integrity, to test forms, to ensure that when momentum returns, it is not merely speed, but directional force. Pressure, in that sense, becomes a stored, disciplined charge, ready to be deployed with purpose. There will be practical moments when that redirection looks like boundary setting. You stop consenting to roles that require you to dim. You renegotiate responsibilities that were once vague. You step away from teams that resist necessary reform. It may also look like inventive work, taking a process apart and rebuilding it to be more transparent, or designing a product or message that communicates rather than seduces. These choices will often feel lonely at first because pioneers operate where others have not yet imagined the cost and discipline required. Remember, being early is not being alone forever. It's being ahead of alignment. At a social level, this transit exposes the lag between individual evolution and collective readiness. You, reading this, are likely ahead of the curve in some respect. That means relationships and institutions may not yet have the language or structures to hold you. That gap produces friction. That friction is not moral failure, it is a developmental reality. Hold compassion for both yourself and for those still functioning within older models. Your task is not to rescue everyone or to be endlessly conciliatory. Your task is to steward a field of influence, starting with your own integrity, and to accept that influence gains traction through resonance, not through coercion. Let me give you a simple, generalized example. Imagine someone on a mission to create a new way of teaching that centers experimentation over rote learning. Under Mars in Aquarius, they might find grant panels uninterested, colleagues defensive, and students uncomfortable with unpredictability. The instinct might be to force the model to fit the existing system, to water down innovation for acceptance. Under this transit, that impulse will feel intolerable. The righteous anger stakes a claim. Either the system adapts or we build a new structure. That person may end up leaving the institution or launching a pilot that attracts a different cohort. Either path is hard, either path is a pruning that makes future influence possible. Here's a micro-interlude worth noting. In community spaces I've watched, people write simple testimonies about a decision to choose themselves in a small but clear way, declining an offer that would have diluted their voice, saying yes to practice that felt risky, or simply leaving a group that demanded small betrayals of integrity. The feedback loops that followed were not immediate miracles. They were slow realignments. New collaborators appeared, processes shifted, and the person discovered capacities they had not trusted. That's social proof for the idea that awareness is equipment. Choosing yourself is not an escape hatch, it's a tool for alignment. Now, what does leadership look like under this shaping? You are being prepared to carry influence and responsibility, not merely to achieve personal ambitions. Influence here is directional. It guides systems toward forms that can bear greater truth and complexity. This is not about charisma or fame. It's about endurance, clarity, and the capacity to stand for a design long enough for a culture to catch up. That requires patience that is different from passive waiting. It's active patience, tending relationships that are worth shaping, training capacities that will be needed, conserving energy for the battles that actually move things structurally. Expect your priorities to shift. Short-term wins will feel hollow. The things that matter will be those that can be scaled in ethical ways, that can be replicated without dependence on cults of personality, that leave infrastructures intact and improving. You may feel less interested in applause and more interested in reproducibility. This recalibration is precisely what Mars in Aquarius seeks to activate. What can you do practically while this transit does its work? Start with the basics of stewardship. First, maintain clarity about what you can control and what you cannot. You can control your commitments, your boundaries, your daily practices. You cannot control how quickly others change or how institutions respond. Second, conserve energy like a careful engineer. Prioritize projects and relationships that will survive pruning, not those that will demand you continuously prop them up. Third, engage experiments rather than all-out launches. Prototype, test, iterate. Aquarius loves pilots. Mars supplies the courage to execute them. Fourth, practice honest communication that is not reactive. Name what is non-negotiable and why, but avoid martyrdom-laced drama. The clarifying force of your words will do more structural work than the heat of unbridled confrontation. Honor the loneliness without surrendering to it. Loneliness during this transit is not a verdict on your worth. It is a signal that the social scaffolding is shifting. Use the isolation to do the internal engineering, sketch new frameworks, cultivate relationships with those who share your wavelength, and spend time refining the language you will use to translate your vision to others. When the time comes to scale, language and structural clarity will be your most effective tools. Be gentle with impatience. It is a symptom of an acceleration that has not yet found its runway. Impatience sharpens your discrimination. Use it to cut away what wastes your time, not to trample what needs seasons to grow. Remember that durability sometimes requires slow chemistry. Ideas and systems need cycles of testing, feedback, and modest repair. Your role increasingly will be to steward that chemistry rather than demand instant perfection. Another practical cue: cultivate a community of peers who are also prototypes in various respects, people who understand the discipline of alignment and who can hold you without trying to quick fix your process. Peer networks are crucial because they offer mirrors that do not infantilize your experience. They can help you read when righteous anger is pointing toward a structural intervention and when it's a reaction needing attention. Keep sense-making resources at hand. Read widely across disciplines that bridge systems, thinking, ethics, and practical engineering of organizations. Aquarius favors the cross-disciplinary mind, the one who borrows metaphors from technology, architecture, ecology, and governance to build new forms. Mars brings the willingness to test those borrowings in the messy reality of practice. The combination will make you a builder who is both visionary and accountable. At the collective level, imagine what happens when many prototypes are simultaneously sharpened. Systems begin to show cracks where power depended on appearance rather than function. That's necessary turbulence. The aim is not to create rupture for spectacle, but to encourage honest reformation. Mars in Aquarius tends to expose the weak joins in systems so that they can be addressed. That exposure is uncomfortable because many systems mask instability through motion. Here, motion without integrity is revealed. Stand for processes that can be transparent, replicable, and accountable, and you will become a node in a network that favors durable innovation over transient trend. There is a spiritual dimension to hold alongside the practical. If you believe in destiny, think of this transit as initiation rather than judgment. If you do not, think of it as a stage in psychological maturation, an enforced maturation that accelerates clarity. Either way, the language you use internally matters. Frame what you feel as preparation. Narratives shape habits. When you tell yourself you are being forged, you'll treat the pressure with reverence and strategy rather than shame and haste. In closing, return to the thesis. The struggles of powerful souls are not random suffering. Mars in Aquarius often singles out prototypes because their work will alter collective architecture. You are not failing because the world resists you. You are being sharpened because the world will need what you are being prepared to offer. Pressure prunes, delays align, anger becomes a compass for reinvention, and authenticity replaces approval as your guiding currency. Hold steady. Keep building patiently and consciously. Your impatience has a purpose. Your loneliness is a clearing. Your anger is directional, not merely destructive. Pressure becomes propulsion when you use it to refine structure, not to lash out at the scaffolding. Let the transit serve its function, a focused charge that readies you to carry responsibility, influence, and direction. You are not being punished for wanting change. You are being readied to hold it. If this resonated, subscribe for clear readings and practical tools to navigate transits like this, and join the conversation. Your experience helps others find context and courage.